So, how can we create a successful podcast, Daniel?
Again, we're trying to base this on actual knowledge we have rather than spouting theory. The Digital Marketing Podcast is a podcast we have been doing for 12 years?
13 years.
13.
Now. Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And it started off Kieran and I chatting, really. What's going on, what we've been looking at, and so on. It was recorded in some very peculiar places. We recorded in strange cafe spaces, actually in cafes with people talking
Not
around
just
us.
Actually in the cafe, but we were laid face first on the table with coats over our heads to
The
try and
echo
stop
was really
the
bad.
echo. Yeah.
All sorts of strange locations. It's professionalised a little bit since then. Louise has joined us. We now do a video version in this very studio, slightly different setup. Exactly. So, but basically, it's a podcast that is top 5 marketing podcast, top 10 marketing podcast globally in most countries. We get an awful lot of downloads. We've had millions and millions of downloads now. And trying to look at, okay, untangle that and understand what makes it successful.
What is it that makes it
Yeah,
successful?
right. So I think the reality is that, well, I'm going to hand to Kieran this because I'm interested in your
I
opinion first.
genuinely don't know.
Well, yeah.
People just seem
People
to
just listen, they're like, right, I know what it is. Okay.
Yeah, no, it is a bit more than that.
Yeah, so if you think about what our target audience is marketers, digital marketers, students, business owners that are trying to and struggling to stay up to date with digital marketing. So one, they need to learn and stay up to date quickly in a no-nonsense kind of way. 2, they've got no time. 3, that audience used to commute and travel a lot. Maybe after COVID, not so much. Podcast adoption went through the roof during that period, but fundamentally, they needed to learn easily in an informal way. They over-indexed in terms of listening to podcasts, and they really, really struggled with this constant change. So if you provide them something that's conversational, us chatting, it's in a podcast format, you can listen to it when you're doing something else, and the content is done in such a way that it's easy to absorb, it ticked their boxes. It was just the right format for that audience, and there wasn't something like it at that particular time as well.
So, especially recently, there's been a huge surge in the podcasts that are out there. So, is there too many out there already?
It was certainly easier when we started. It's like when the first influencers came into YouTube, much easier to stand out because not that many people were doing it. What I would say, though, is that for a niche, no, there's not. I mean, there might be a zillion podcasts, but how many of those are in American accents, for example? Or how many are about entrepreneurship? Or actually, what about if you did entrepreneurship for dentists? Or what about if you found your particular niche or you did it in a unique or different way?
It's like a similar argument was, well, aren't there too many websites? So let's not bother with a website. Like that would be insane. And they're nowhere near, not even close. There's plenty of space and there's plenty of opportunity. What I would say is that it is a long, hard slog that you have to put out content regularly. And this is where most podcasts fail. They'll push out half a dozen and then everybody gets a bit tired and, they don't reap huge rewards from it. They don't suddenly become famous overnight. And therefore it just sort of falls by the wayside. No, you've got to have that pressure. You've got to keep it going. Keep it going.
Well,
and that's hard.
It is, adding to that, because for years, we started doing one a month, I think, right?
Yeah.
And we try and get together. And then we started doing them more regularly, but then the business became more successful. So suddenly it was hard getting time in my diary, Kieran's diary. So let's just do it next week. Let's do it this week. And it would the release dates would change. When we started doing it as a video podcast, we all had to be in the same place at the same time on a book date. And suddenly we did it like clockwork. And suddenly the numbers kind of do this. So there's a real motivating factor of having to be in a studio. Because when you could do it remotely, it was easy. You could just do it in different places, and that's great.
And that's as simple as booking the time in. Book the meeting.
And making it
Literally,
precious.
Yeah.
Okay. And by having this whole thing of you're in a studio, you're paying for that time, and that really is a motivator. So everyone kind of does it as well. Bearing in mind that, you have to travel a long way, Kieran, to get to the kind of studio to do these things. Everyone has to take it time. All right, so I think that's helped. But that regularity, putting the content in, making sure it's unique is really important as well.
So what are the different format options? And would you say that video is essential?
Okay, so the different format options, it's limitless. We've always done conversational. So whether we're doing a podcast or answering questions like this, we feel that, rather than speaking direct to camera, we're actually going through and we're answering questions. That feels a little bit more... Thanks for looking direct to camera. So it's that whole thing of having a conversation and learning from people, as opposed to telling people something. So I think that's kind of on brand for us as well. But you've got other things, other podcasts that are hugely produced, that have got multiple voices coming in different locations, like all the NPR podcasts, a lot of them are really highly produced and polished. It can be that, and that can work really well. It doesn't have to be that from that point of view. So I think that you can choose the format that works right for your audience, but it's got to align with your audience from that point of view. There are others that are monologues. I mean, when I was at Inbound Conference, there are a couple of marketing podcasts that I'd always listen to, and I was like, oh, wow, the people are there. And it was just someone just doing a monologue. And I thought, I didn't think that would work, but that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that.
Most presentations you see are a monologue.
Right.
So
if you planned it and you put the work in, so that's the thing. So I think it works in different formats. Now, is the video essential? Our videographers are going to shoot us if we say no. It's not. But what I'd say is that there's an
Please don't hurt me.
Exactly. There's an element of no, you don't have to. Audio still works really well. However, by doing video, you will add a couple of things. You'll reach an audience in YouTube that you wouldn't get anywhere else. They're not all listening to podcasts. You will get excerpts that are way more useful in social media. And actually, it adds a whole new dimension to the whole thing. You can play around with different formats and so on.
We've tried to use all sorts of tools to make audio like much more visual, and you have all sorts of funny like graphic equalizer graphs and stuff
within
like
the social media posts.
Yeah, and they just don't work that well as video. I think the one thing I would say is that video tends to need to be much shorter, much more edited and curated.
It's a lot more work, certainly.
Yeah, and actually it's harder for people to watch longer form video because it consumes you. Like this is one of the big things. If you've got longer form content, having the video is brilliant because you can use that excerpts from it and it really helps with your social media and your content marketing in general. But I think having audio, like longer form content in audio is great because I can be doing something else. So I'm filling
you might
in
be commuting to work. You don't have to give that undivided attention.
One of our listeners irons his shirts every Sunday for the week, and he listens to the
yeah, that's it. And it's horses for courses. It depends on how the audience are and what they want to consume things. So to put it in context, it's not rocket science, but it's the right content for the audience in the right format. But you need a deep understanding of your persona to work out would this podcast work for them. But if you have got a unique voice, you've got something interesting to say, it will work. It's then about doing it consistently to build up that audience over a period of time.
And you need to do it with somebody you like working with and enjoying being with, because that's definitely a big pull. I went out my way to spend time with you because you always shared with me such fun tips, and we always had a laugh doing it. It was quite relaxed.
But I think you can hear that, right? Because there's always banter in the podcast between all of us, and actually that adds to it being a bit more relaxed rather than it's a very formal conversation where I'm interviewing someone. So I think that's it. And if you get the dynamic right, it can work effectively. But you need to test and learn because you won't get it right. And we learn in every episode of what we're doing, what works and what doesn't work. So test and learn, follow those principles, but don't be put off by the fact there are loads of podcasts out there. There is still a huge opportunity.